Hi there. We're going to be doing another soap this morning. We're going to be reading through Matthew chapter 20, verse 20 to 34. I'll just read out the part that stood out to me most, which was from verse 25 to verse 28. Hopefully you've heard this one before. If you haven't, that's okay. You know that, this is Jesus speaking, by the way, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. That's one of those Bible verses I like to memorize because I love the idea of the whole thing. Anyway, let's read a couple verses beforehand and a couple verses afterwards as well, just so we get the context, which just means getting sort of a good overall picture of what's happening right now. And then maybe I'll go in and explain some of the things. But you might have a verse that stands out to you that's different, and you might want to reflect on that Bible verse instead, and that's fine. So the title of this section is A Mother's Request. Then the mothers of Zebedee's sons came to Jesus with her sons, and kneeling down asked a favor of him. So Zebedee, so two of Jesus's disciples, their dad's name is Zebedee, so they're called, the sons of Zebedee. Anyway, what is it you want? He asked. She said, grant that one of these two sons of mine may sit at your right and the other at your left in your kingdom. Now, in ancient culture, sitting at the right of someone, especially like if it's a king, sitting at the right hand of the king shows that you're the second most important in the whole kingdom. The king would be the most important, and whoever's on their right is the second most important. And then the person on the left would be the third most important. So sitting on the right hand of anyone is really saying you're there. That's where the saying your right hand man comes from. It's to show that you're really important and you're the king's favorite person, really. Most important in the kingdom. Verse 22 says, you don't know what you are asking, Jesus said to them. Can you drink the cup I'm going to drink? We can, they answered. Jesus responded, you will indeed drink from my cup, but to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared by my Father. So this is sort of Jesus is saying a lot here, and I know it can get maybe a little bit confusing. But talking about a cup and sitting left and right. Why is it important to be able to drink a cup? Different people get different things out of this. Some imagery we have from a cup is communion. So when we have a cup in communion, that's often to symbolize Jesus dying for us. So potentially, Jesus is saying, unless you're willing to die for humanity, which they can't do, then you can't be that important. So only Jesus can have that responsibility and role. Also, some imagery is wedding imagery. So often in Jewish weddings back in those days, the person who's becoming the husband, so while they're about to get married, the husband has to decide to not drink any wine until they get married. So he will give the cup to his bride and say, will you drink this cup? And the bride will say yes, that's the exact same as proposing and saying, will you marry me? And then the bride will drink from that cup, and then that means the husband or the groom cannot drink any wine until they get married. And it could be a year, could be 2 years until they get married. So it's sort of a covenant, a promise of marriage. So Jesus could be saying, unless you can have this covenant, this promise, then yeah, you can't make that decision yourself. No, I think it's a rhetorical question, meaning Jesus is like, no, you can't sit at my left and right. It's not for me to decide even, let alone you guys to decide. Anyway, from verse 24 onwards, let's keep reading. When the 10 heard about this, they were indignant with the 2 brothers, which means like they were frustrated to hear their 2 of the disciples wanted this extra importance in God's kingdom. Jesus called them together and said, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants," and I'll just pause there. So saying Gentiles is anyone who's not a Jew, anyone that's not following God at that point. After Jesus died, a lot of the Jews became Christians because they were following Christ, who was the savior of all of the Jews and the whole world. Anyway, so saying that the Gentiles, they will be like, oh, I'm so good, I'm so important. They want more authority, more power. Jesus is saying, let's not be like those people who exercise authority over other people and want to be higher than others. Let's do this. So he says, instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave. So saying all of that, Jesus is saying here, if you want to be the most important in the kingdom, then you actually need to be a slave and be a servant and help people. So he's flipping the idea of the rest of the world saying to be the best, you need to be the king, you need to have lots of power and have people feed you grapes, and you can use someone else as a footstool, and you can put your legs up on their back. Jesus is saying, no, that's not how the best in the kingdom, that's not how the kings work in God's kingdom. If you want to be the best, you need to be the servant of all these people. You need to put yourself below people. If you're sitting at a dinner table, you're the one that should be getting up doing the dishes, even if it's your special thing, and you could be making someone else do it, but no, you're going to do it yourself because you want to serve others. And then here's one of my favorite verses. Jesus says from verse 28, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. So the Son of Man is just another term for saying the Messiah, Jesus, the person who's going to save the world. So Jesus is saying himself hasn't come to earth to be this big king that gets, a giant fan waved on him while he gets to sit around and do nothing all day as the king. But Jesus came to serve and to give his life. So to die for us and be a ransom, as if we're a captive, we're a prisoner, and Jesus is paying for our price to be set free. So love that section. I love the whole Bible, but that's a really good part that I just love reading over and over again. 2 blind men received sight. So verse 29 says, as Jesus and his disciples were leaving Jericho, a large crowd followed him. 2 blind men were sitting by the roadside, and when they heard that Jesus was going by, they shouted, Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us. I'll pause there. So Son of David is just another title for Jesus, because there's lots of prophecies, a lot of things in the Old Testament saying that the Messiah, Jesus, is going to come and he's going to be a descendant. He's going to be a great-great-great-grandchild of King David. So often Son of David is another title for the Messiah, because it was prophesied that a descendant of David would come and save the world. The crowd rebuked them and told them to be quiet, but they shouted all the louder, Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us. Jesus stopped and called them. What do you want me to do for you? He asked. Lord, they answered, we want our sight. Jesus had compassion on them and touched their eyes. Immediately they received their sight and followed him. And that's really important as well. Not only were they healed, they received their sight, but they followed Jesus. It's really important that we don't forget who is the Savior, who is the one doing the healing, rather than just being happy with what God's given you. Being able to follow God is the one step next that we need to make. Anyway, that was all read from Matthew chapter 20, verse 20 to 34. I look forward to hearing about what you got out of this passage, and look forward to reading your prayers about what you've learnt today.